Welcome to the Right Guys podcast, where majorities go down one person at a time. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Welcome back to another edition of the Right Guys podcast. My name is Max McGuire here with Mr. Producer Josh Hammerling. Lots to get into today. Want to apologize. Our stream on Friday went down on YouTube because I committed the terrible offense of holding a firearm on camera for educational purposes. You're allowed to do that on YouTube videos. You are not allowed to do that on YouTube streams. So a live stream cannot hold a gun in any way, shape, or form, even if it is compliant with every other rule, just for educational purposes. So in the future, when we do gun-related shows where we want to do a show and tell, I will make sure that we pre-record that for YouTube and publish that after we're live. A little annoying, but I just wanted to apologize because that got taken down completely.
I guess I kind of get that rule, because you don't want somebody live streaming crazy call to violence on your stuff, and then
yeah.
But, so we've had issues with them in the past, and this one is kind of like, well,
but I kind of feel like live streams and videos should have the same rules. So you're allowed to show a gun on a regular video,
sure,
if it's just for educational purposes. Or if you're handling it in a legitimate, safe manner at the range, doing something legal with it, not waving it around, pointing at people. There should be some consistency. But listen, it's their rules, and
we live with it.
We're there just because a few people like watching it there. Most of the people watch through Rumble, so if you haven't already, do hit that subscribe button on Rumble and like, comment, and share to help us reach more people. So the GOP, Josh, one vote smaller, one person smaller. They went into last week with 222 members of the House of Representatives. Now they have 221, and that one person gone is George Santos. He is gone. So right now, the GOP has 4 votes. If they lose 4 votes, then it's a tie, right? So the actual margin, they have 8 more votes than Democrats, but if four Republicans now vote with Democrats, it's a tie and it doesn't pass. Why would it? This seems so stupid.
It's not a problem. I mean, the GOP moves in lockstep with each other. They never miss an opportunity to vote on something as a block. I mean, I don't think they've been more united than they ever have been. I mean, I'm not really worried about maybe 8 rhinos trying to cast a vote in the opposite direction. You know what I'm saying? If only they could act like Democrats and actually be in lockstep. And do you think anybody decided that it was a bad idea on the Dem side to get rid of Santos?
Oh, well, two Democrats voted no.
Impressive.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Trying to pull it up. We can pull up their names.
But for the most part, they were kind of salivating at the idea that they get to reduce a majority. That's one less person you have to convince of something, right? I mean, that's one less person you got to politic and make promises to and get on the, backroom deals and all that stuff. And I'll be the first to say I'm not really a fan of Santos.
No.
I mean,
no.
No. I'm going to go with the no. But I will. The
jokes have been kind of funny. It reminds me of the what's his name? Who was it reminds me of the Al Gore stories. Like, I invented the internet.
Yeah.
Right. The how that just completely people ran away with it, giving Al Gore credit for everything. It's kind of become that way for George Santos, where people are making fun of him like, oh, he's a veteran of every American war. Yeah, like that kind of stuff.
The things that were said.
Yeah. It's like he's cured cancer and he'll do it again if you reelect him. A lot of these are Bill Maher jokes, but they're funny. He got a lot of them from the internet because there's some good memes going around. I wouldn't let George Santos babysit my kids. I wouldn't let him in my house.
No.
I really, if it was up to me, I wouldn't trust him with power. But I also don't understand the calculus behind getting rid of a Republican when you already have such a narrow majority.
It's like showing your hand in a game of poker before the game even starts. I mean, it's like they've already folded the cards. I am going to give Santos credit on something, though. It's amazing that in New York, he could convince a bunch of GOP peers to follow it and then vote for him, right? I mean, there's a cult of personality there that is interesting at a minimum and incredible at the best. I mean, he's a weird cat, right? So I'll give him that credit. But he's a real piece of work, we'll say. But you've got a majority. And can you put it aside? I mean, ethically, could you actually look yourself in the mirror every day if you were in the house with him and say, this guy belongs here? He deserves to be here with us? Did he really defraud anybody? I mean, does he have a case for fraud? I mean, compared to all the Trump stuff, right? It's
the
probably more likely. I mean, the allegations are damning, but
they're
crazy.
Bad.
So I don't know. I don't know.
They're bad.
Do you keep him or do you let him go? And they let him go, right? I mean, they let him go. He was like that weird cousin at Thanksgiving you don't want.
No, yeah.
You
Listen,
know what I mean?
The guy, his voting record was different organizations rated. He got a 96 for voting conservatively. So it's like, and you see all the people who were going against him and in the same rankings, they're getting like 50%, 70%, 25%. These are not conservatives. These are just GOPers, establishment Republicans.
Yeah.
So, what the things he's accused of, some of the things I can understand it being an accident. Like someone who gets a company credit card and they use it in their Uber app for a company related Uber rental, right? And then without realizing it, they call an Uber for personal reasons and it charges the company card. Like, I can understand how you could make a mistake and use the wrong card on a purchase. I don't understand how that ends up being $1,000 for Botox on a campaign credit card. You know, like that doesn't.
Yeah.
Or OnlyFans, which is just subscribing to pornography. Like, how is that? If you're doing that, you're double, triple, quadruple checking you're using the right card. So some of the stuff I can explain away. It's a mistake. Other things, it's just so crazy. Like writing on an FEC form that he has loaned his campaign $500,000, and it's just not true. And he only has $8,000 in his bank account. Like that.
It smells fish. Because what if you paid back the loan?
Well, that's what he said. I mean? He said he paid it back, but there was no evidence that ever came in.
Yeah.
So it's. Listen, I don't like him, and if it was my goal, I'd want him to lose his next primary. But when you only have a 4-vote majority, you can't lose someone who votes 96% of the time conservatively. And I just want to show you an example. I mean,
that's incredible, though. That's an incredible stat. There, like you said, there's establishment GOPers that can't even hit 40%.
Yeah,
they can't.
Yeah,
which is wild. And he does it at 96. I mean, it's like he could have been the perfect useful idiot. He could have. Maybe that was his plan from the start. I don't know, Max. It just, why would you let him go?
So, like, here's an example. This isn't a perfect example because this is something that George Santos actually voted. Well, no, he voted no. So the good vote would be no. This was the vote to refer the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, Biden's DHS secretary, refer it to committee instead of just voting it on the floor. Santos voted no. No is the right way to go. But you can see here that it lost by 8 votes. It lost by 8 votes. So when you're trying to impeach and remove members of the Biden administration, and you're losing by 8 votes, how do you get rid of one of the good votes? You know what I mean? Like,
strategically, it makes no sense whatsoever.
None.
Like, was the GOP discussing this behind closed doors? Was there a plan for this? What kind of strategizing was the GOP doing on that? Where's the head of this saying this is the dumbest thing we could ever do? Even though he is not, we've made the case that he's probably not the best people. He's certainly not the most honest.
Yeah.
But strategically speaking, Max, this is a huge blunder, right? Because not only do Democrats get to look good for kicking him out, every time that somebody shows up who acts the same way, I mean, is the same criteria going to be applied to them? Is it going to get easier and easier to get rid of those you just don't like? I mean, what if you were faced with a bunch of crimes that were fake, like Donald Trump? Do you want to start getting rid of anybody that starts doing that stuff? It sounds asinine, but it's true.
This is the crazy part of this is George Santos hasn't been convicted. Now, if any of this is even close to what the government alleges, he's probably going to be convicted. But on the off chance that he is acquitted of these charges, you just kick someone out just because you don't like him or just because he hasn't been entirely truthful. If that's the standard, they should all kick themselves out. Like I was saying before we got on the call today, if this is the standard, you are not convicted of a crime, but you're kind of an asshole and you don't tell the truth and you probably are a crook and are stealing from people. If that's the standard, George Santos shouldn't have been the first person kicked out, and he certainly shouldn't be the last person kicked out.
Hey, I was doing math on how many people in politics have lied.
Yeah.
100%?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you do this for me, I'll do that for you. Oh, I've reneged on that. That's not going to happen now, right? Spending for this just doesn't materialize. Oops, suddenly I'm no longer pro-life. I'm pro-abortion. I mean, that's what you get for a rhino. So what's scary is that the craziest guy that ever could have been elected to the House of Representatives is 96% conservative on vote. Just sit in the corner and let the little guy just work, right? Leave him alone.
Let him cook.
Yeah.
You know what? Don't donate a cent to his reelection campaign, right?
Not at all.
And donate all to the opponents, fine. But there's no strategic reason to remove someone who is a conservative unless your goal is to not accomplish conservative things. If that's your goal, then this fits in that goal. If your goal is to pass conservative legislation, this doesn't make it any better. Because remember, we've covered this on the show before. They have to pass a bunch of appropriations bills. And then the Senate has to do it. And then they have to fight for their version to survive until the end through the reconciliation process. So I'll go ahead and put up my screen now just to show you this process for appropriations. The House has passed almost all of them except for the Department of Justice. Now, some of these are old versions that the House passed before Speaker Mike Johnson was elevated to the speakership. So whether or not the House wants to go back and do a little bit of a better job with these, fine. But technically, as it stands right now, the House has a version of every one of the 12 appropriations bills passed in some way, either through a vote or through a special rule, except for the Commerce, Justice, and Science one. Now, DOJ, that's a big one. That's not something you just do by voice vote. That requires a lot of negotiation and fighting for different things. But there's 10 days until they go on vacation. Because remember, Congress loves to go on vacation. I'm going to see if I can pull up
the calendar again.
Yeah, there has to only be.
There's a handful of sessions until then. Yeah, and whether they actually get those things started on the floor or not will be a shock, right? And not everybody's focusing on getting that stuff done. I mean, there's plenty of things that they're trying to push through their agenda behind the scenes, and it's. I mean, how many do we have left?
So today's the 4th. So there's today, and then the House is in session. House is in yellow, Senate is blue. So the House is in session 7 more days after today. The Senate is in session 9 more days after today.
Wow.
So again, if you know you have to do some important shit, fine. You want to kick him out after the appropriations process, after these votes on impeachment and initiating impeachment proceedings that you know they're going to go down to the wire.
Oh yeah.
Fine, kick him out then. Fine, but why? The only reason to do it now is if you don't want to do the conservative things. You don't want to pass the conservative bills. You don't want to actually advance the conservative agenda. I saw another article that GOP senators are furious at the promises that Donald Trump is making on the campaign trail. That he's going to fix Obamacare, that he's going to secure the border. Promises that every Republican has ever made, right? But the GOP senators are furious because if he wins, they'll be on the hook to do it.
Yeah. Hmm.
So they rather not do it. They'd rather sit back and do nothing. And
Then, then why are they elected if they're not going to do conservative values? If we chose them to do conservative things and then they don't
yeah,
do conservative things, then why did we vote for them?
yeah, yeah. It was harder for them to give, who was it, Rashida Tlaib, a slap on the wrist for
Yeah.
for inciting like almost a riot on the Capitol grounds. It was harder
Hmm.
to give
Hmm.
her a
Hmm.
slap on the wrist than it was for them to kick out George Santos.
Right, and it's not easy to sit out or kick out a sitting congressperson. It. It takes a lot, right? It takes a
Yeah.
super majority. And like, who's leading the charge on the Republican side for this? I
Well,
mean, well,
what happened this week that kind of changed the minds of a lot of people was Representative Max Miller. Um,
what?
he sent a letter to his colleagues telling them that George Santos, according to him, had actually stolen money from his elderly mother. And that his elderly mother had, I guess, donated to the Santos campaign, and the campaign ran her credit card for thousands of bucks.
If true, whoa.
Yeah, now that's terrible. If George Santos did it, terrible. If it's
Yeah.
someone on his staff who did something stupid, fire the staff member. Like, if that's the standard that people are removed from Congress if their staffers do something stupid, then again, everyone has to get removed.
Yeah.
But that
Well,
galvanized
mhm.
that galvanized
The vote.
the vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, there was a lot of calls for it. I'm sure there was a lot of stonewalling until it actually did happen. I mean, do you think they actually delayed this as much as they could? Right?
They
Because of all the things you're
yeah.
talking about, all these votes are coming up. Do you delay till you get what you want, knowing that he's 96% likely to vote towards the conservative side? I mean, why not game plan that and just delay it? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It makes more sense strategically.
It does. It does.
It's just,
And listen, it seems very obvious they have no intention of actually passing that legislation.
yeah.
That's the kind of legislation that they're going to say, "Oops, we tried," and that's all they ever intended to do. They never actually intended to have it pass. I anticipate that there are going to be bills and things that lose by one vote
Mhm.
in the coming weeks, by one or two votes. Where if George Santos had been there, would have probably passed. And then we're going to have a much different conversation about this whole game plan. But listen, this isn't far from what we expect from Republicans. Republicans would rather lose and avoid being called a bad name than win and have the media and the Democrats hate them.
I'm sick
Right?
of that crap.
They'd rather lose and get invited to the cocktail parties than win and be left off the guest list. That's
I'm,
how it is.
I'm tired of hearing we tried. We
Yeah, we
tried. We
tried.
just couldn't get it
We tried.
done. We tried, but we rolled over and showed our bellies, and then it was over because I really like hanging out at that mixer and then getting some of my pet projects done instead of actually doing the will of the American people. No, I guess
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I mean, I shouldn't feel that way. I just feel like my vote matters less and less is what it feels like. And when it does goes towards a person that does get elected, they're useless.
Well, who's your congressman? Ken Buck?
I think it's Ken Buck. I'll have to check.
He's the worst. He's the worst.
Yeah, he's a
He
turncoat for sure.
he's announced that he's not running for re-election and he's anti-Trump and is going to try and kill anything conservative coming down the pike. No, I mean that's what you have to deal with. You elect a Republican, and he's either a lot like isn't actually a conservative like some of these rhinos that we're talking about, or
Mhm.
he's so conservative that he gets a target put on his back. They're not going to stop with George Santos. We're already hearing that they now want to go after Matt Gaetz. They've wanted to go after Matt Gaetz for a while.
Yeah, but he hasn't done anything crazy though,
He
other than
got
hold people accountable.
Yeah, but that's good enough. And remember those allegations that he had trafficked an underage woman for
Yeah,
sexual purposes
yeah,
across
I
state
remember
lines?
that. Mhm.
Even though the government said that didn't happen, they're now trying to resurrect that in the ethics committee and say that even if there isn't enough evidence to convict, there is enough evidence to kick him out of Congress. And that's a situation where you probably want George Santos's vote to keep him in office. You keep kicking out the most conservative members. And it's crazy that we're talking about George Santos, someone who was like a cross-dresser in Brazil. And we're talking about him as the most conservative voting member of Congress. He's up there. He's up there.
It's just wild.
He's up there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Listen, I am very perturbed at what he was doing in South America during Carnival. Like, that's gross, right? But if you want to pass conservative bills, keep them in. And now they have a taste for blood, so they want to go after Matt Gaetz. They want to go after, they're trying to go after Jim Jordan, saying that he didn't answer a subpoena. So they're trying to use all these technicalities to go after the most conservative members of Congress, not because they've suddenly grown a conscience and want to hold members of Congress accountable. They just want to get rid of the conservatives, period, full stop. And what I love about George Santos, and again, it's crazy. I'm not a George Santos supporter, but on his way out the door, he's taking shots at everyone who's against him. Here is a clip from the House floor during his removal vote, where someone, we'll see in a second, calls him a crook to his face, which again is a violation of the House rules. You're not allowed to talk to the other side. You have to talk to the chair. And George Santos just responds and say, "You're a woman beater." Let's play the clip.
You, sir, are a crook. I know I should direct my comments to the chair. I yield back.
My colleague wants to come up here, call me a crook. Same colleague who's accused of being a woman beater. Are we really going to ignore the fact that we all have past and we all have the media coming out against us on a daily basis? I can go and read about all my colleagues. I'm not going to stand here to smear them. I'm not going to stand here and use the time I have to say ill things about my colleagues. I refuse to stoop to that level.
Well, he has done it on his way out the door.
Yeah. Wow.
Was that the first time that the first time you saw that one?
Yeah. The dude, I love the guy sitting behind him who just looks over like, oh my God, it's on.
Yeah. And you start to understand how in olden times, back in the 1700s, 1800s, you get fights where you'd have canings, where members of Congress would take their cane and beat the other side or someone in their own party. You could see how it used to be like that. And the minute someone comes in who is, if what the government says is true, he's a fraud. Yeah. Everything about his life, his CV, his resume was fraudulent. The minute that he gets in, like, it just causes chaos.
You know, the voters are allowed to speak, Max. Just because Congress doesn't like the person you voted for doesn't mean you should just be able to kick them out on a whim. Because being able to kick somebody out of Congress now becomes political convenience and political expedience, right? And sets a standard of rules that will change the fabric of Congress forever. Because what happens when you do not like a Matt Gaetz and what he stands for, and you can start bringing stuff up that's not even true to kick them out. I mean, the precedent set here is dangerous. How many times during the Biden presidency have we said that something happening in government is super dangerous? And it's been several, right? But yet Donald Trump is the most dangerous thing to democracy.
Well, that word, democracy, right? We don't have a democracy. But the most democratic thing we have is the direct election of senators and congressmen. It's everyone votes, and whoever gets the most votes wins. At that level, there's a democratic election for those individual seats. So it's stunning to me that the side that for the last 5, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, however much, has been saying that democracy is our best, most valuable institution, and how dare the other side go after democracy. That's what they've done here.
Yeah, perfect case.
He was elected. Maybe he shouldn't have been. Maybe he should never be elected again, but he was elected. And is this the standard now? Just being indicted? We know how fraudulent indictments can be. Again, I don't know if his fall into that basket or not, but is that the standard, that just having accusations thrown at you, if 50% plus one congressmen don't like the guy, they can undo democracy? They can overturn democracy? when Republicans wanted to do that with the election results in the Senate, we were told by the left, you can't challenge the election results. That was democracy. How dare you? Well, which is it? Which is it?
Right. Do you protect it, or do you just use it for political convenience? I never thought I'd be having a conversation with you about how a sitting member of Congress has been removed on opinion. It blows my mind. There's been so many,
and then it would be this one, and it would be this guy.
Yeah, yeah. But why would you silence all of the voices of the people that voted for him? Okay, so a weirdo got elected to office who may have committed crimes, but that they're still allowed to elect whoever they want. Because what happens when you start applying false crimes to people and they speak to go after you? You would never be able to get anything done in Congress again, because you just have one side constantly silencing the voice of others. It would turn into a true aristocracy if it's not already there, right? I mean, that would be the worst thing.
Remember this from 2021?
Yeah.
They stripped Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee assignments.
Just because she was going against the narrative.
Yeah, for her past comments and her social media posts, for conspiracy theories and violence. They were one step away from giving her the George Santos treatment.
Yeah.
But that was next.
But the voice of the people spoke when they elected her because they want that voice there.
Yeah.
A lot of people call MTG crazy. A lot of people call MTG great. As long as she's sitting there voting conservative, I'm glad she got in office.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no.
She's voting her conscience on stuff.
Any critique you have of her, like there are legitimate critiques that she cozied up too much with McCarthy.
Sure. And
those are legitimate critiques. But no conservative wants Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Congress. No. If your goal is for Congress to do conservative things, you want to keep all of the conservative people there.
Yeah, especially like a solid vote for what you need. I mean, they go after what's her face here in Colorado, MTG's partner, Boebert.
Yeah,
right. They go after her, and I think she's been set up a lot, especially with that last video in the at the theater. But why would you want to get rid of solid votes? Why would you chase them off? I mean, let their voices be there. And if the case is that they're saying weird, crazy things on the floor, have we not heard weird, crazy things from others on the floor too? Have we not heard crazy anti-Semitic talk out of some of the squad? Haven't we seen some of those tweets that have been coming out from the squad that are very anti-Semitic, very anti-Israel? Would that bubble up to the level of cause to get rid of them from their seat? I mean, imagine it's just going to start multiplying, Max. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. There's going to be this big monster in Congress now that if you don't follow the good boy club, you're out.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous threat to have, because no state would have a voice anymore. There would be no actual House of Representatives. It would just be a house of thieves.
So, yeah, you're right. So New York Governor Kathy Hochul, she jumped the gun a little bit.
Oh.
And she put out a tweet. I'll read it to you.
Oh.
After Santos was removed. She said, I am prepared to undertake the solemn responsibility of filling the vacancy in New York's 3rd district. The people of Long Island deserve nothing less. This governor can't fill a vacancy in the House of Representatives. The Constitution requires that it be filled by a special election. So if it was a senator, she'd be allowed to fill that vacancy. So it was very funny to me how on brand it is for the first thing that Kathy Hochul did after he was removed was advocate a constitutional violation. It's so on brand for Kathy Hochul and the Democrats. But you can see that that's what this was all about. And I'm not surprised they don't know what the Constitution says and haven't read it.
I don't think they care.
They don't care. But that's the first thing that was how she responded to it. Envisioning a world, not a constitutional world, not a legal world, where she would get to name a Democrat.
Yeah. And that's what she's salivating at, right?
Yeah.
She might be sitting there, and this would, I'd be pissed off at my aides if, I put a tweet out like that. Because how often is she actually putting out that tweet versus her people, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, if my aide put that out, I'm looking for a new aide at that point. And if she put that out, it shows you the depth she's willing to go to, or her complete ignorance of the law, right? And for her to call for a damn, like, she's probably just sitting there thinking, I'll get the most liberal one I can get in there. That's gonna destroy let's destroy some voting rights. Let's destroy some pro rights. Let's
and it's everything. It's everything.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my goodness, there's been a shooting. First response, let's violate the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And all guns.
Ban the First Amendment. That's their go-to solution. Well, we're past the halfway point. I wanted to, as I mentioned on the way out the door, even though he promised in that clip he wasn't going to do it, George Santos has been bringing out some receipts. And it's not hard. Listen, he is, for all intents and purposes, a fraud based on everything he said. He made a lot of promises and a lot of claims that weren't true. Fine. He's literally been elected to work in a den of frauds, right? Like, they're all frauds. Yeah. So like, this is the quintessential pot calling the kettle black. Fine. But on his way out the door, he's asking some questions. He's asking some questions about his fellow former colleagues. One of them being a question about Malliotakis, asking how, before becoming a member of Congress, she never made any kind of stock trades, but only after she was added to the House Ways and Means Committee, she started having an active trading habit, trading in high volumes, and having significant wins.
I'm reading that and just thinking to myself, oh my God, keep going.
And here's one example of that. On March 17th, Nicole Malliotakis bought shares for New York Community Bancorp, NYCB, March 17th. Less than 24 hours later, that bank announced that they were buying out Signature Bank. It rallied 40%.
Holy crap. She
got in right before a stock jumped 40%. Now, are we supposed to believe that before she joined Congress, she had no real knowledge about stock trades? But the minute that she's on the House Ways and Means Committee, she just becomes a savant and just happens to get in at the perfect time.
Right. And it's
perfect time.
And looking at this, it looks like it had been creeping down. Like, I'd like to see what it was like before and to know, like, why would you take a risk on that, seeing how poorly it was performing, unless you knew they were going to purchase that bank beforehand? But that would be unlawful, wouldn't it, Max? Wouldn't that be insider trading? I mean, would that like the ultimate definition? And she's using a political, and if true, she would be using a political office for that gain.
Yeah.
Now, as far as I knew, that can't happen, right?
Well, here's the trend. Here's the trend line where it was. She bought it right here. For all the evidence suggested, this thing was going down.
Right. And it bottomed out, really.
Unless you knew they were about to do this, there was no real reason to buy this stock.
And then make a 40% gain on that, Max? I mean, you could sell a 30-year position and just sit back pretty and just wait.
Well, I don't know when she sold. If she sold, she would have actually doubled her money.
Yeah.
More than doubled her money. If she sold at the peak when it was 13.7.
Yeah. Wow, that turns 100,000 into 200,000.
Yeah.
That turns $500,000 into $1 million. You know what I mean? Depends on what you put into it.
Just one of those really convenient things.
Isn't it?
Malliotakis, a New York congresswoman, was one of the most vocal opponents to George Santos.
Really?
So he's coming back with some of those receipts. Another one.
Swinging hard, man.
Another one. Representative LaLota, Nick LaLota. He obtained his law degree at Hofstra in day school, not night school, day school. But at the same time, he had a job working at the Board of Elections. So how did he do his day job and go to daytime law school? Well, it sounds like he was being paid to work on the Board of Elections, but didn't actually do his job. So
Whoa.
George Santos has submitted a report to the Congressional Ethics Committee on this congressman, asking how did he go to law school during the day when he had a day job paid by the taxpayers.
Max, stop. You have to stop right now. You're making me like this guy.
I know. This is
What the F, dude? What are you doing here?
I want to go take a shower. I feel
know.
dirty.
It does, but it's like, dude's swinging hard. And
Yeah.
he's swinging for the fences, man. I mean, these are like knockout blow kind of punches if they land.
Yeah. Did I grab the same one?
Yeah,
I
you
grabbed
got
the
one
same one by
twice.
accident. Here's one for Congressman Menendez, who is Senator Menendez's son. It says, while Congressman Menendez has not been invoked by the diligent investigation of the DOJ into his father, there remains a question of what did he know and when did he know it. The complaint is to seek clarification from the freshman congressman on his involvement with his father's overseas dealings over the past years and any potential compensation he received.
Wow. I think it's a fair point to make sure we weed out any doubts surrounding Rep Menendez. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, dude. Because he's essentially applying what's happened to him to all of these other people for these ethics violations. And all Santos has kind of done here is just made crap up, right? Maybe there might be a little bit of money gone, but for the most part, he's just an actor who pretended to be someone who's getting called out on it, right?
Yeah.
As far as I know, that it's not ethical, but it's not like the end of the world. But knowing whether your dad was working with the Egyptian government to get stuff done on their behalf and to be bribed allegedly for it.
Yeah.
Who sounds like the worst bad guy now? Who sounds like the crazy one? Like, you're making me like this guy, and I hate you for it. So that like your Christmas present just kind of was like, ooh.
Here's another one. Representative Mike Lawler. He's filed an ethics complaint for questionable campaign finance violations. Again, this is what George Santos has been charged with. Congressman Lawler owns a portion of Checkmate Strategies, and he uses the same firm that he is a beneficiary of to pay for services related to his campaign. The concerning questions are, is Mr. Lawler engaging in laundering money from his campaign to his firm, then into his own pocket? Which is what George Santos has been accused of doing. So this is, again, it's making me like the guy, but I don't believe he's innocent. But I do believe he's not the only one doing it. Like, it seems to me like George Santos was elected and he said, oh, what are all the loopholes that everyone else is using to get rich? And he did them poorly and is going down for it. And now he's calling out everyone else who told him how to do it or does the same stuff. I mean, like, this is what it looks like to me. Kind of like how Donald Trump was accused of doing all of the things that literally Hillary Clinton did, right? In terms of laundering information, things like that. It's making me like him.
So did he get it? Like, was he kind of somewhat initiated in this group of individuals that are leveraging the United States to make money for themselves and calling them out when they get busted for it? Because if that's the case, man, this is going to start opening cans of worms. Now, I don't think anything's going to happen to it because there's too many powerful people most likely lined up with this. But it's starting to like creak that door open, right? How much have they been ripping us off? I mean, I know Nancy Pelosi has recently given up all of her stock trades and like that, but what about all the years that she was in there as the House of Rep Speaker of the House and was trading on a level that people started following her and duplicating the trades to their own benefit because it was so efficient at making money. And as I know it, they're privy to a bunch of financial information before the rest of us even smell it, right?
Yeah.
And on a lot of this, like if Santos is the one pointing out all these ethic violations by people, what happened to one of the pillars of our representative republic, which is the press? Where did they go? Why were they never investigating this stuff and putting it out there? Where's our press pool actually doing the work of a free press to point these things out so we don't make these accidents with awful people? I mean, it would make me think that maybe all of the major media would be in bed with the Democrats and politicians. But that would be impossible, right, Max?
No, it'd be impossible.
No, that would never work.
You mentioned Nancy Pelosi.
Wow.
Her stock trades.
Yeah.
SPY is the Spider S&P 500 ETF. So that's basically
Whoa.
pegged to the S&P 500, and the S&P 500 is just one of the exchanges, one of the markets, showing generally how everything's growing. These are the members of Congress who beat the S&P 500 in 2021. And you see Nancy Pelosi, but you know who just edged out Nancy Pelosi? Dan Crenshaw. Dan Crenshaw in Texas. Dan Crenshaw voted to remove George Santos. So if you're kicking out George Santos for like being corrupt and being terrible, and you're on this list, how are these people still here? Because listen, I can understand the bottom of the list slightly doing better than the S&P 500.
Right.
But like Austin Scott up here, like quintupling it, Brian Mast tripling or quadrupling it, Dan Crenshaw doubling it.
That's crazy.
Like,
look at all these Republicans, Max.
I know. So they should have to explain this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not one who says that you shouldn't be allowed to invest in things, right? I think it should be in broad ETFs, and you'd want to avoid the appearance of impropriety.
Yeah.
Do as much on your end as possible to make sure it doesn't look like you're trading on advanced knowledge about things. But recognize, unless you're in Congress for a few terms, you don't get a pension.
Yeah.
So just being in Congress, like George Santos won't get a pension.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna shed any tears. But if you're only in Congress for a couple terms and you're not allowed to invest in the stock market and you don't get a pension, well, then you've just lost 4 years of your life, your ability to invest and prepare for retirement. So they should be allowed to do this in a way that doesn't allow them to do instantaneous trades on specific stocks, right? It should have to go into a hopper and they don't know when it's actually going to get bought. But like what we just showed with this, where she buys it right before a massive gain, that shouldn't be allowed.
Smells fishy.
If she goes and says, I want to invest in New York Community Bank, and you say, okay, and that gets scheduled out to a point where she doesn't know when it's going to get scheduled, that's fine. That's fine. I don't have a problem with them wanting to invest in a company. I have a problem when all of these congressmen and congresswomen seem to just always invest at the perfect time.
Max, there are investment firms in this country who dedicate tons of resources to algorithms and AI to try to figure out how to best invest their money in stocks and bonds, trades, you name it, right? And if a lot of them outperform, if they're outperforming 9%, they're having an incredible year, right? If they're outperforming at 10%, they're having an incredible year. And this is after money is being poured into that kind of research. And all these Congress people somehow miraculously not just outperform the major investment firms.
They outperform the Bernie Madoff promises, right?
It's incredible, dude. I mean, if you and I had that kind of information, we could get rich overnight. We really could. We would just be able to pour all of our resources into something, wait for a 40% gain, sell off, worry about the taxes, but we'd be sitting pretty. So answer me this, Mask. Is Congress now just a way to go in and make money? And if that's the case, are they actually doing the work of the American people? Because it doesn't sound like a government for the people, by the people. It sounds like a government for profit.
Yeah.
Which, remember when Matt Gaetz said, all of you are bought and paid for.
Yeah.
And now how long do you think it's going to be before, like you said, before they start putting him in the crosshairs? Because they're bought and paid for.
Listen, one of the proposals to stop them from being bought and paid for is term limits.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if someone can't over decades become millionaires in Congress if they're only allowed to serve an X number of terms. That's a proposal. I have kind of gone on both sides of that because having spent so long in an advocacy position in our old job, what you realize is that the people who are able to get things done and the people who understand the process and the parliamentary maneuvering are the ones who've been there really long. And as nice as it is to have a Boebert or a Marjorie Taylor Greene, these firebrands, understand that when they first get to Congress, they have no idea how to actually get things done.
Sure, yeah.
So there has to be a happy medium. You can't have a Congress made up of novices, all novices, nothing will get done. It'll be done sloppy. It won't be done well. Laws will be overturned because they forgot to cross the T's and dot the I's. Like that's a real thing that would happen if you're only allowed to have novices in Congress. There's also people talking about, well, millionaires shouldn't be able to be members of Congress. I'm more concerned. Like, I have legitimate concerns about people who become members of Congress who don't have money, because they're going to want to make money. And you don't want to just have millionaires.
Yeah.
But you also need to understand how expensive this stuff is. I mean, there have been lots of stories about who members of Congress have rented apartments from. Understand that as nice as that salary is, hundreds of thousands, it's like 150, 175,000, somewhere around there, right? It's well over 100. As nice as that salary is, when you're constantly traveling and you need to have a home in your home district and a place for you to stay in Washington, D.C., understanding how expensive it is to live in Washington, D.C., somewhere you're not going to have drive-by shootings, it can get very, very expensive.
Very fast.
And so members of Congress who are middle class when they come in can actually be pushed to the brink of bankruptcy, which is crazy to say, but the expenses really do pile up. So I understand that argument that unless they get a pension, even if the pension, they're not set for life necessarily, that you should have every right to make money lawfully and ethically. It's just, there's no good answer, because if you get the millionaires, then they've bought the position. They're not going to be bought while they're in there, but they've bought the position. So that's another problem. I don't know. There's no good answer.
Right.
The solution is to regulate how people can trade stocks and how people can benefit themselves. The worst, and I'll say this and I'll let you respond. The worst, far worse than stock trades, in my opinion, are the book deals, where members of Congress will sign a book deal with a publishing house. They'll get paid in advance, millions of dollars in advance, that they get to keep no matter how many books they actually sell. And then they go out and they only sell a couple thousand books. And then you realize who's investing in these publishing houses. And you realize that these are kickbacks because the publishing houses produce the textbooks. You know, it's all crooked.
Yeah. And the money just gets so tempting when you don't have it.
Yeah.
Right. It's just so tempting. How, it's always easy to say, yeah, I turned down that $50,000. I turned down that $100,000. But until you've got $100,000 cash in front of you, most likely in cash, right? Because, the best way for these things to go away is to
Egyptian gold bars. Egyptian gold bars.
I mean, if Menendez was smart, he would have melted those things down, right? Just made some jewelry, but he didn't care. He's kind of blatant about it, right?
Yeah.
But it's so tempting. And Menendez is not a poor guy. I mean, I thought he was fairly wealthy before he got elected. I mean, he's wealthier now than he's ever been. And I think that's why they're looking into things. I mean, he's already survived 2 trials, right? That have both ended up in a hung jury.
Yeah.
But the money's tempting. It's so, when suddenly someone's like, we can get you enough money so you never have to worry about a thing for a day in your life again. Like that. Here's your mom sick. You need some money. Is your kiddo sick? Want to put those kids through an Ivy League school instead of state school?
Yeah.
What are you going to, and yeah, like you always say on those book deals, I mean, Obama got a book deal for $100+ million right out of the White House. And I mean, like weeks after the White House, right? And he's got the biggest house in DC that I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
And I didn't think he was wealthy before he was president.
Yeah.
Or at least super wealthy.
Listen, let me see what his actually net worth is. Bob Menendez net worth.
It just kind of blows my mind.
They claim he only has a net worth of like $600,000, which I don't believe. 18 million. 18 million is his net worth. 18 million is his net worth.
Million?
He started as the mayor of Union City in 1986, was there for 6 years. Then he became a member of the New Jersey State General Assembly until 1991.
Okay.
Then he was a member of the New Jersey Senate from 91 to 93. Then he was a member of the House of Representatives for New Jersey from 93 to 2006. Then he became a senator from 2006 to today. So this is a guy who's been nothing but a public servant. Wow. Nothing but.
$18 million.
It's a lot. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to accumulate on a public servant salary.
I've known a lot of people who own their own businesses that are large to medium businesses who still can't say I've got 18 million in the bank, and they've been pouring their blood, sweat, and tears to their businesses for decades. And Menendez has he ever owned a private company? I mean, it's just public service, right? So
public service.
I mean, if we started adding up all the salary, all the investments, is it going to hit that 18 million mark? And that's just what has been reported, because, I mean, there was cash in envelopes and suits, gold bars.
He has suits in his closet, and he still has the gold bars in the breast pockets. Like, I don't know how much I trust the net worth on these websites because I don't think anyone got into his closet before these net worth figures were published. He's a crook. They're all crooks. What's been crazy, and I just mentioned this before, but what's been crazy to watch is we know that these people are crooks. We know that they didn't become multi-millionaires on a public servant paycheck. When other people have tried to follow the same kind of pathway, like a George Santos, maybe take advantage of some of the things that they took advantage of, they're immediately prosecuted. But all these other crooks, where they probably were doing the same kind of stuff. I get it. Putting Botox on your campaign card, not a good look.
No.
But I bet you every single member of Congress has put something on their campaign card that really shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
I bet you every single member of Congress has.
It would be hard. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who hasn't. And that's probably why they don't want anybody looking.
Yeah.
Because, Max, all this starts is, what if it gets the ball rolling on looking? And that's what they fear. They don't want you to see how they're making the sausage in the kitchen, because they know it's dirty. They know it's fatty and gross and filled with grizzle, and you have to eat the shit show that they give you when they're done. And that, here's your crap sandwich. Enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, I become rich, and we couldn't come up with $300 a person during COVID.
Yeah.
Right? We can't do anything for you, the citizens, but there's plenty for us. We're taking a big old bite out of that pie, and you guys can enjoy your dwindling middle class income.
The Maui wildfires victims only get a couple $100, but we'll give Ukraine the equivalent of giving all of those victims $50 million each.
Just could have just repaired all their homes. Could have actually done stuff for American people that need it and deserve it. And but right now, I guess we're just busy emptying out a bunch of hotels and stuff so we can pay for a bunch of illegal migrants to come in and live.
So now we're going to put them in national parks. That's the new.
Oh, plan. Is that the next plan?
Yeah, we'll have to do that episode on Wednesday. That's what Biden wants to do. Let them camp in our national parks. So take the only parts of America that are truly pristine and beautiful, and fill them with illegal alien tent cities. That's their solution. Would have been really nice to have George Santos in Congress to overturn that.
Woo. I mean, imagine trying to go to Moab and there's
nothing everywhere. Yeah, you're crawling over a rock and it's just
right. Because that's where they'll go, because it's always warm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all the beautiful places you want to go will be filled there. It just
send me Yellowstone. Crazy. Send me Yellowstone. How many animals do you think they're going to hunt and kill if they have to live in Yellowstone?
Oh, dude! Or
come on.
How many of them will actually be killed because none of them have ever hunted before?
Yeah.
And then they piss off a buffalo. Now they'll be like, "Well, we got to get rid of the buffalo on the national park because it's hurting the illegals." I mean, it's just crazy, Max. And they make a ton of money while we all suffer.
Yeah, it really is true. Really is true. We'll talk about that Wednesday. Because that's the new plan. But until then, make sure you check out all the links in the description. Subscribe to the podcast on Rumble, on YouTube. Also subscribe to an audio edition of the podcast. Very, very helpful. Set up to auto download. And it's easy. Listen in the car when you're driving to and from work. Really convenient. We try and make this as audio friendly as possible. That's it for this edition of the podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
And I am Josh Hammerling.
And remember, the fight to take back the country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together. See you next time.
See ya.
you.